So, we are, for the most part, the main disciplinary, or the same disciplinary, but there's 3 education majors and a religious studies majors, but his ultimate goal is to be a youth minister. So we're all gonna end up dealing with children at some point in our life. My name is Alexis Swartz, and I am a middle childhood education major with concentrations in language arts and math.
I'm Rachel Oska, and I'm also a middle childhood education major, and I'm concentrating in language arts and social studies.
My name is Josh Stump. I am a religious studies major and a minor in philosophy.
Hi, my name is Lauren Lamline. I'm a middle childhood education major. My concentration areas are language arts and social studies, and I'm getting my 4.5 endorsement. So, essentially, our group, like Alexis said, is comprised of educators. So now we want to take a second and just raise your hands if you can remember a time in which an educator has influenced your life, whether it was in a college setting, in middle school, elementary school, at church, anything. So, does someone want to share an experience? Yeah.
Okay, so my freshman year seminar, I came here and I didn't know a single soul on the whole campus, and I was really homesick, and I lived about 2 hours away, so I'd make my parents come pick me up every other day because I didn't have classes on Tuesday and Thursday, and I didn't have a car, so they could come get me. And so my mom found out that we had advisors, and she emailed my advisor. His name is Dr. Kenyon. He's now Dean Kenyon. I don't even know if
He doesn't even work here anymore.
He doesn't work here anymore.
So upsetting.
And he is amazing. And so he emailed me and told me he wanted me to come meet with him, and I was like, what is he talking about? So I go and I meet with him. He's like, so I spoke with your mom. I'm like, oh my God, what? Why are you talking about what? And he was like, she told me that, like, all this and that. He's like, I just want you to give it a chance, like, give it a shot. And he's like, I need you to start participating in classes. I would just go to class, show up, not say a word. And so I was like, okay, like, whatever, you're paid to say this, whatever. So I finally gave it a chance, and I was really considering on transferring to a community college and just commuting. And then, so I gave it a chance, and I'm still here. And honestly, he's the reason that I'll probably get my degree, and that I'm still a Raider. And so
He's awesome.
he is the best.
He went to Cleveland State. He's like the dean of Cleveland State. He was my advisor too.
He is like the best guy ever. So
He seriously was one of the best professors of his university.
very influential. He had a tough life too, and you never know. But
See? Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Alyssa. So, I mean, it's pretty relevant and pretty, apparent that educators in general have a large impact on our life. And as educators, no matter where we're at, we basically want to foster our love of learning onto our students. So that's going to be, our big idea. And now Josh is going to talk about more questions.
So as a pastor, we have a lot of questions that we ask. And a few of those would be, how can we help? How can we help the individual that we're dealing with, or how can we help the community? And that can be whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And how do we address those issues that are going on, and how do we answer those questions? So a lot of questions, as you remember Dr. Johnson saying, some of our questions lead to more questions. It can be frustrating in our field, but that's just the reality of it. And so another question is morality. Really big questions of what's right or wrong. Pastors ask those questions all the time. It could be gay marriage, it could be abortion, climate change. And the difficult thing with this is the church is split on some of these issues. Gay marriage, you're starting to see different denominations, different sects of the church. They're starting to, accept it a little more. There's some churches that are saying, no, this is the tradition that we had, and that's what we're going to stick with. So it can be tough. I mean, when you have different churches saying different things, you kind of got to figure out what your denomination is and what you want to believe in. So really big questions of what's right and wrong and what's going on in the world. Some questions lead to more questions, and they can be frustrating.
So from the education standpoint, the three of us just kind of talked about how if you see the, what's this called? Thank you, Maslow. If we're basically trying to mold people to be the best versions of themselves, I know that's cliche, but it's true. and also the cookie cutters, for children to show their individuality, but also fit the norms of our society. So, do you guys have anything else for it? So, my question was, who can we trust? So in education, we kind of look a lot towards the research and the theorists. So these are just some general theorists, and actually we're going to be talking about some of them later on next week, so I'm not going to step on the toes of the people that are presenting that. But we look towards like psychological studies and like human studies, and essentially people are not all the same, so we have to be flexible as educators and basically just work with it and like roll with the punches. So for example, John Dewey is a really big theorist that we follow, and it's learn by doing. And an example of us doing that in this presentation, we asked you to raise your hands and to share. So the best types of teachers, no matter if it's in a church or in a classroom, it's very interactive. So there's some other things like multiple intelligences goes hand in hand with that. Basically, we learn by spatial reasoning, mathematical, and all these different things that as educators we have to incorporate into our lessons. So basically just teaching different ways.
Okay, and then I explored the question of where we gain this information from. So as educators, a lot of it comes from like hands-on experience. So you have to actually work with the students or with the people that you're helping in order to try to understand them and to gain information about like who they are. And then it's just through simple observation and experimentation. So you have to observe the pupils, observe the students, what's working for them, what do they like, what are their interests. And then experimentation, teaching is about a lot of trial and error. So you come up with all these plans and you plan a lesson and you try it, and if it works, it's great. Sometimes it doesn't work, so you just have to reteach or you have to try something new. So it's you have to be flexible. And then assessments too. So this isn't like a great part of education, but it does drive a lot of the curriculum. So you have to teach something and then, or sometimes you'll give a pre-test and then you'll teach it and then you'll give the same test as a post-test. So you'll see, did the students learn something? Did they grow? And if not, sometimes you'll have to go back and reteach. So that's where like a lot of the information. So essentially the students are like our main source, because without the kids we have nothing. So as educators, if you're not paying attention to what the kids need and their like abilities, then you're not doing your job.
My question was, why is this disciplinary important and what does it contribute? One of the big things we talked about was molding the youth. Like Lauren said, the cookie cutter. These kids one day are going to be in our classrooms are going to end up being the president, the future teachers, business people, sport business. Whatever you can think of, that's who they're going to be. So in our classroom, they are learning real life scenarios, and one day they will be able to pass on their knowledge to someone else. And that ties in from students learn from the teacher. They're, like everyone raised their hand, you have more likely than not had a teacher that has influenced you, and you will remember that teacher. So students and teachers will have these connections that will go far into the future. And I mean, I still talk to some of my high school teachers and my elementary teachers, and they still ask me how I'm doing, and they want to know what I'm doing, and they're still interested in everything that's going on in my life, and they care. And like I said, students will pass on their education. Some of my most influential teachers are the reason I'm going into education. So how they taught me and what they did in their classroom, I want to be able to give that back to students. Even on the college level, like Alyssa said, I wasn't much of a college person either. I didn't like it until I talked to a few of the professors, and they were like, just give it a chance, you can do it. And that changed my whole perspective on it, and that's why I'm still here.
I think the really interesting thing about our disciplinaries is that we all have had an experience with education. Like, we've all gone through school, even if we were homeschooled. I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of us have a religious background, so like we've been to church or like we know of faith. So I just think that's really interesting that we can all relate to this. So making this come to light, we had a light bulb, so that's why. We discussed if we've been prepared through the integrative core in a liberal arts education. Personally, I believe I have, and I try to look at the good in every single class that I've had. As teachers, we need to be extremely well-rounded and extremely professional, and we're held to this super high standard, which is great, but is also super hard. And in the same sense, having these different classes is allowing us to relate to other students in different ways. For example, I took an Asian studies class, and I have a couple students in my current preclinical class that are from China, and they have English as their second language, and they're fluent in English, they're awesome, but I'm able to relate my experiences from my class and what I've learned to their culture. So that's really cool.
For me, it's a little different. Still undecided on whether or not it's really affected me or not. For me, being in such a specific field, I want to be a youth pastor or eventually a lead pastor in the Free Methodist denomination. You know, the humanities deal with philosophy and religious studies altogether. So, I mean, could I have went to another school that is focused on religious studies and philosophy, where, you know, Spring Arbor University up in Michigan, which is basically the big college in Michigan when it comes to my denomination, the Free Methodist Church. And so a lot of the pastors I worked with in my internship over the summer, you know, it's where they went, and they had that really specific training, whereas I'm coming from a liberal arts education, and I kind of got a background of all these different world religions and different things like that. So it's a little different. I haven't really figured out how much of an effect it has on me yet, but I mean, I will once I get into the hopefully a job when it becomes the youth pastoring or lead pastor. So it's just a different perspective. I guess it's nice, you know, more well-rounded, as we've kind of been saying, when it comes to world issues and different people and different cultures and societies around the world. So still up in the air about it.
I'm going to ask you a question right away. So you are traditionally the humanities to begin with. So your major is sort of, in the sense, liberal arts. So you're talking about, when I am in the humanities, what really am I learning from liberal arts when this is what I would be learning at another school?
Yeah.
So I ask you, would you be getting training in the other, you know, we talk about the 4 areas. These groups represent the different areas of the liberal arts. What about science? Would you have been taught that at the other school?
Hopefully not.
Science,
math.
science, math, and that type of reasoning. Do you think that will serve you in the future as a pastor?
Math.
In the sense
Finance.
of structured reasoning.
Okay, so, well, I'll just go really quick at this point. Church isn't just about church and going up on Sundays and talking to the congregation. You know, it's a business. You gotta keep the church going with tithing, and it's pretty big. Like the church that I attend, it's a pretty big church, and that's one of the things I realized was, you know, they have a finance guy that works for the church, and so I mean, yeah, math is important. Figuring out, knowing how 2 + 2 is 4, I guess, is pretty important in science. But I mean, I'm not a big fan of it personally. That's part of the reason why, you know, I'm not good at it. I don't like it. It's not something I really think I'm going to use in the future. But I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know.
It's an interesting thought. I know we've discussed this a little bit because I know that you're asking this question, and I feel like this might even be your question that you write about at the end. But I think that part of the thing that you're developing here, whether you realize it or not, is that rational thought and structured thinking with
Yeah.
math and science.
That too, but I think philosophy is almost
True.
thinking, critical thinking, and the process of thinking, and really developing the thought process. So I mean, since I'm a philosophy minor, I mean, I would have got that at a different school too, and I think that's a pretty big part with scientific thinking and whatever.
Psychology. Leave that alone.
Yeah.
More than you realize.
Yeah.
For me, my perspective is I'm kind of half and half on it. I'm gonna start out with saying that if I would have had like one more course, or some of my courses for my major did not overlap with the integrative core, I would not have gotten out of here in 4 years. As an education major, we technically have to be out in 3.5 because our last semester is all student teaching and we're not supposed to be taking any classes. If we are, it has to be a night class, and you know, like the gen eds or the integrated core courses, those are not offered at night. So that has a big problem. But like I said, the reason I say yes to the integrated core is because if you really sit down and look at it, some of those classes do overlap for your majors, and that helped me out tremendously. One of my concentrations is language arts, and the language arts classes I took, 3 out of 4 of them fell under the humanities. So that helped me out tremendously. But I say no because as a teacher, yes, you need to be able to speak in front of a class, but you have to be able to relate to the class. Like, I'm not gonna stand up here when I'm teaching and just stand at the board. I'm gonna be interacting with the students and walking around, and it's gonna be totally different than standing up here and giving a presentation. So I wish almost in the integrative core that there was a little bit more hands-on experience, especially for us education majors, because we aren't gonna be standing up here. We're gonna be interacting with students and doing all sorts of things and not just staying in one spot. So.
In my opinion, I think I would say that like I haven't like taking a science class and stuff, like I didn't like thoroughly enjoy taking it because I'm not like that. But I think looking at the big picture, like it overall did make us more well-rounded. And as a teacher, it's like important to learn different learning styles. And I think by like taking a science class, like obviously like science people may be like more analytical and more like concrete. So I think it helps you like figure out like how do those people think, like how can I better help them overall. So I think it was beneficial.
So after hearing us talk about our disciplinary, this is called a fist to 5. So you rate 1 to 5 on your fingers how much the teacher that you thought of, the first question that we asked, impacted your life. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So hold it up when you got it. It's interesting. It's just a mix. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for listening.